All right, ladies and gents, in today's video, we're going over how to spool your spinning reel with fishing line, either braid, mono, or fluorocarbon. But with the braid, we're talking ultralight braid, really, really thin stuff that's typically made in Japan and designed for Japanese reels. So for our American version of those Japanese reels, we need to do some modifications. So let me show you some of the couple of the reels here. And what I have here are two Shimano Stella 1000s. This one is a Japanese version that's only sold in Japan, and this Stella is the American version. And if you look closely at them, there's some significant differences. The Japanese reel is a little bit smaller than the American version, and the biggest difference that we're concerned about is the spool diameter. It's got a much smaller spool than the American version of the same reel. The American version holds a lot more line. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to add something called backing or other line before we put on the braid, because the braid is designed for this shallow spool, and there's just not enough of it to fill up one of these American versions of the same reel. Now, there are a couple reasons for this. One is the Japanese reels are hand assembled, and they're much, much lighter than the American version of the same reel. So to save weight, they give it a smaller spool. Also, the Japanese braid that we're going to be using, like say if you want to throw mini jigs or other really light baits, is very expensive. So in order to create like a 300-yard spool, it would be very expensive for that line if you wanted to fill it up with all braid, which you could. But they don't do that, just I believe to keep costs down, and the average Japanese spinning reel doesn't have the capacity anyway for that. So that's what we got. So we're going to have to work on putting backing on the reel. All right, now let's go to the bench and let's get to business and start putting some line right on that reel. All right, guys, here's what we're going to be working with. We got our fluorocarbon for backing. Our braid that we're going to put on. I got a little bit of electrical tape here and a couple of scissors and cutters, and then we got our rod and reel here. Now I have the rod broken down into two pieces because you only need the bottom half to do this, and we just need this first eyelet. So the first thing we're going to do is take our line, our backing line, and run it through this first eyelet, because doing this just helps ensure it goes on the reel smoother. And then what I'd like to do is just tie just tie a simple overhand knot. So I'll make a loop, and then I'll just run the line through it one time, but not tighten up the line here or tighten up the knot. And then what I do is I flip the bail back and slide this loop over the spool and then tighten it. It's much easier to do it this way. Then I just make one more overhand knot, and that's all we need, because this knot, the fish is never going to fight this knot. This knot is just to help hold the line on the spool so we can spool it up. Now I get my clippers, and I'll clip this tag end as close as I can here. Now, take a little piece of electrical tape. And electrical tape's real cool because it's very stretchy, so you can stretch this out, and we're going to clip just a little piece off and stretch this over the knot, and that's going to help hold the knot in place while we spool the reel. It's going to keep it from slipping. So just put it over the line, and then I stretch it all the way out. And it makes it very, very flat, but yet holds that line in place. So now we flip the bail back, and we're ready to start spooling. All right, now that we're all tied up, we're going to give ourselves a little bit of room. We're going to put the spool in an area that's not going to get obstructed with anything. And we're going to hold the rod and pinch the line between our thumb and our index finger to put pressure on it. And another really important thing to remember is keep your drag tight. If this drag is spinning while you're spooling, reeling line onto your spool, it can cause line twists. So you want this spool not to spin at all. And what we're going to do is just kind of crank very slowly. And you go slowly because if you go fast while you're holding this, you're going to burn your fingers. So you just do nice, slow reel cranks and just keep an eye on the line and make sure everything's going on nice and even and there's no loops or knots that are going to form, because otherwise you're going to have to strip all this off and start all over. Now, I know what you're asking yourself. How do I know how much backing to put on either mono or fluoro, right? Well, what you can do is you can look at the reel, the spool itself, and on the side here there's a bunch of little numbers, and it tells you line weight and how many yards or meters you can put on. But now you got to research and figure out what kind of line that they base this on. Is it mono? Is it fluoro? Is it braid? Is it what kind of braid is it? What kind of mono? And then you got to figure out what kind of braid or mono or fluoro you have, and figure out what the diameter is, and do a math equation and figure out exactly how much to put on here and match it with the braid that you have. But I say forget all that.
Are you serious?
I ain't got time for that. So what I do is I just guesstimate. I'll put on about halfway through the spool, and then I'll tie a double uni and put on the rest of the braid. And if I screw it up, if the spool is too shallow and I use up all the braid, I have an insurance policy. I have an old extra reel with no line on it, so I can tie the braid to it if I screw it up and slowly reel this onto this reel so I don't damage the braid, then take all the mono or fluoro off and start over and put more on the next time. So if you ever have an extra rod and reel, or if you don't, and you want to put braid on one of your rods, pick that day to do the line on some of your other rods, so you have an open spool, so you don't have to stress about whether or not you're going to put the proper amount of backing on your reel. All right, there we go. That looks like about halfway, and now we're ready to tie a double uni knot and put some braid on. Okay, so I'm going to open my bail up again, make sure my backing line is going through my eyelet. I'm going to set this rod down. And now I'm going to get out our Sinister strand fiber braid here. Take off the packaging. Alright, now we're going to tie a double uni connection knot, and I will have a video link at the end of this video so you can see exactly how I tie this knot. Alright, so there we go. Nice little connection knot there. So now we just spool up the braid. Alright, now that we got all that set up, all we got to do is spool the braid on just like the backing. So we'll use our thumb and index finger again to hold tension on the line. So you want this on here tight. And we just go real slow and spool it on. Very carefully. Just want to watch the spool, make sure there's no loops. And just continue this process. Alright, and right about there looks like we're done. And how you know you're done is usually they say leave about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch away from this lip, and I'll show you, but I usually like to use the tip of my fingernail to see if I haven't over spooled it. But I'll show you that what that looks like in a minute. There's a little beveled edge here. You do not want to fill the spool past this beveled edge, or as soon as you open this bail, all the line's going to fly off and you're going to have a real bad mess. So we just clip our line right like that, and we're ready to tie on a leader and get to fishing. All right, ladies and gents, there you have it. Relatively easy procedure. Even easier if you want to just spool up mono or fluorocarbon. You don't have to tie a connection knot, and you just spool the whole reel up with exactly that, and you're done. Or What I've done with some of my bait and weight rods, I had some old braid. I spooled that on first, and then I tied a connection knot, a double uni, and put on my fluorocarbon on top of that, just so I don't waste that extra line. Because when you have a decent sized spool, even on a 1000 series spinning reel, I'd say 70% of that line never sees the light of day. Fishing for trout, you're never going to get spooled out that badly unless you have your drag set just way too loose. Usually you can control a big fish and they're not going to get even anywhere near that backing line, whether it's the braid or the fluoro, whichever you're fishing. And you can get other tools like this deal right here. This is a little line spooler. It has a little clamp, so you can clamp it onto any table. And then these deals come off with springs, and you can put the spool in there and adjust the tension on this. And these deals are, I think, about 15 bucks on Amazon. Really cheap and really easy to use. But if you don't have this, do it the way I just showed you. But this is a really good tool to have, but it's not absolutely necessary. So that's about it. Make sure you take a minute to check out these videos that are listed up here. I got the link to the double uni knot video and some other how-to videos. Always make sure you like and subscribe if you like the content. If not, thanks for watching. And hope to see you guys out there soon. Tight lines.